Good morning, AM Lockport, my fellow Toastmasters. I currently don't see any guests, but I thank everyone for being here today on time, 7 a.m. Thursdays, for those who are watching on YouTube. Today's meeting is going to be a lot of the previous officers and new officers filling all the roles. So with that, I'd like to start the meeting with our inspiration, and that is going to be our past president, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Good to see everybody. Going to enjoy this nice, joyful 5 days off of work. And why not spend my 5 days off with my favorite fellow Toastmaster family? The inspirational quote this morning is from Theodore Roosevelt. Believe you can, and you're halfway there. From Theodore Roosevelt. Mr. President.
Thank you, Eric. And as always, we do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you follow along, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Toastmaster for the day, who just happens to be me. And our theme today is pets. Pets make our life so much more. One of the things I love about pets is there's even scientific data to show that they make us happier, healthier. They deal with depression. They help people with injuries. They help calm people. In hospitals now, they have little mechanical kitty cats that purr and slightly vibrate that they give to patients before they go in for surgery. Or if they're in their long-term, an older patient, now they have a little kitty cat with them. And it actually helps their emotional demeanor. So I thought that was great. Then I looked it up, and there's an actual technical term for the health benefits of pets. It's zooalia. It's spelled very strangely. It's got a Y and an I and an A all smushed together, so it's hard to say. But I didn't want to go down that road because we all have so many pets. I wanted to give everybody at least some time to tell a story about a pet, because, or at least the name of their current pet or former pet. So with that, I'm going to go through the roles for today. As always, we start with the word master, and that way everyone has the greatest opportunity to use the word as many times as possible throughout the meeting and expand our vocabulary. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Sylvia to introduce herself and give us the word of the day.
Morning, everyone. My video's not working this morning for some reason, but that's okay. You can hear me, I hope. Today's word it's really fitting for this topic because our pets are family, and we think of family as pedigree. I know you probably never thought of that way, but as I was reading the definition, a noun, a registered recording of a line of the ancestry, an ancestry line, a history, or a distinguished ancestry. And I will put it in the chat. I do have two animals. I have one dog and one cat. We call them our grandchildren because I don't think we're going to have any more. And they do bring us joy and happiness, even though my husband didn't want them, and they love him the most, which I'm jealous. So today's word is pedigree.
Thank you, Sylvia. All right, moving on. We have someone who decided to do a dual role, but we'll start off with his quote master role. For the quote master, go ahead, Dr. Gerald Stevens.
Thank you, Tom, Mr. President and Toastmaster. Quotes for today: animals are such agreeable friends. They have no questions and they pass no criticisms. George Eliot. Pets have more love and compassion in them than most humans. Robert Wagner, American actor. The average dog is nicer than the average person. Andy Rooney. Those are my quotes. Should I roll into my Master role, Mr. Toastmaster?
Please do.
Thank you. As Master today, I am hoping not to hear many ahs, ums, or so's and very long pauses or other filler words, and I hope to hear much more of the word pedigree, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Dr. Stevens. Okay, for our next role, gesture master, Stephen Smith, I believe, is our gesture master this morning. No, you're a jester. No, what do you do? Jester or the gesture?
Jester.
Oh, jester. That's what okay. I mispronounced it. That's what happened. Go ahead and give us some humor.
Okay. He's breaking up. I couldn't hardly.
Sorry.
You know, one of the problems of doing this in this format is I can't hear reaction from the crowd, which means I can't hear the groans and I can't get a feel for when it's time to shut up. But forging ahead.
So everybody unmute yourself.
Hey. Well, not everybody, just enough to give me something. I recently bought my pet duck a mask to protect it from the coronavirus. It's nothing flashy, but it fits the bill.
Quack, 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 quack.
I entered my pet snail in a race and I removed his shell thinking it would make it faster. Unfortunately, all it did was make it more sluggish. I have a pet tree. It's like a pet dog, but the bark is a lot quieter. And finally, an Inuit man walks into a pet store holding a dead, bloody seal. He screams at the owner, "Someone clubbed my seal. I demand a refund." The owner looks at him and says, "Sorry, the warranty is void if the seal is broken."
Wow.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. All right. The grammarian for today is Leonard Stevens. Leonard Stevens, go ahead and say hello and tell us about your role.
No, not until you get my last name correct.
Oh my God, Leonard Thornton. Sorry. Oh my God. I wrote Stevens.
That's better. I'll answer to a lot of names, but not Stevens. No
Oh.
offense. Okay, my job as grammarian today is to check our pedigree to see how proper our speeches can be in terms of this language called English. I'll be taking note of good uses of the language and not so good uses, and I'll report at the end of the meeting. Mr. President.
Thank you, Len. One of the things I'm not seeing is people's roles next to their name, not everyone's role next to their name. So that's going to be a little confusing for table topics. And whoever, I just don't want that to be an issue. If we could fix that behind the scenes. Thanks. The next role is timer. And that's important because we want to be able to learn how to speak to a certain set of time and qualify to be a winner at table topics or the day. All these people have certain times. So, Mr. Timer, that is Lawrence Eggert. Can you go ahead and tell us about your role and how you'll be doing showing us what time?
Lawrence. Oh my God.
Larry.
Thank you. Lawrence. Sounds kind of regal, doesn't it? I am the timer today. Using my high-tech method of timing, you will note, again, being a wizard of technology, when you get to the green, you will see this. When you get to the yellow, means you better hurry up because you're almost there. And when you get to the red, you will see the color red. Jackie Kenny, I use your high-tech method. I don't know if she's on here or not, but I saw her do that and I thought that would be perfect. I'll be timing everyone, their speeches, table topics, and evaluations. Table topics are 1.5 to 2 minutes with a 15-second buffer. Evaluations, 2 to 3 minutes, 15-second buffer, or 30. Dave Licata's giving me hand signals, but I don't know what that
30.
It'd
It's
be
30, Larry.
30.
means. Must be the Italian. And speeches are 5 to 7 minutes with a 30-second buffer. Dave, am I right? No, he's nodding. That's good. And I will report back when called upon by the Toastmaster, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Larry. Let's see what we got left. Quiz Master this morning is being filled by Mike Florio. Mike, go ahead and let us know your role and how you're going to be doing that today.
Good morning, Mr. Toastmaster and fellow Toastmasters. I will be listening intently. That will be my job, and commenting with questions at the end of the meeting to test your knowledge of how well you listen to the meeting. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mike. Welcome to the club, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome.
The last role before we get to other things, well, I guess there's actually 2 roles, is the Gesture Master and Tech Master. That role is currently unfilled. Do we have anyone who would like to take that role? Maybe take a second role if you've already had one. Going once, going twice.
I'll do the Tech Master role as well.
Okay, Len,
Mhm.
I appreciate it, Len. Thank you very much. Thornton,
Thornton.
I'll get your last name correct. I must have written it down wrong earlier, but I know it if I look at you. And since you're drinking from a cup, I'm going to introduce our general evaluator with the toast to a guy who's treated me like a pet since he became my guide in Toastmasters and my mentor and confidant to help me with, practice my speeches and give me some honest feedback side to side. He's doing that today as the general evaluator. That's Mr. Marty Johnson. Marty, toast to you.
Thank you, Thomas, fellow Toastmasters. Good morning. As general evaluator, I'll be evaluating the Toastmaster of the meeting and the evaluators, and I'll be reporting back towards the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. So pets, here's a strange little, I found lots of little facts, but this one was my favorite. In the movie Rocky, Sylvester Stallone gets 2 little turtles and he plays with them and has them as pets before the dog. You know he still owns those same 2 turtles? Sylvester Stallone still has those 2 turtles.
Golf and Link.
There we go, golf and we could use that as a quiz, Mr. Quizmaster. But we still can. So pay attention throughout the meeting. One of the other things, human beings just didn't domesticate animals for purposes. Most pets serve no function at all, like a fish. A fish doesn't really help you in any way, shape, or form. It's pretty. It swims around. It's emotional. It gives you some emotional support, I guess. You could talk to it. It won't talk back, but if it does, then maybe you have some psychological things going on. But there are a lot of pets like that. I had gerbils and newts as other small pets. So we can always have all kinds of little pets. And you get bigger and bigger. And people have even had naturally a horse as a pet, not just as a beast of burden. So I know I want to hear the stories about pets. So since we have that under table topics, I'm going to hand it over to a man with outstanding pedigree, because his father is an outstanding member in this group. And that would be, oh my goodness, I want to get his Mike Licata. Mike Licata.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and no guests this morning. Thomas, I want to thank you for such an easy and simple table topics this morning. Pets, people love talking about their pets, so it's very, very easy. I did not grow up with a lot of pets. I grew up around some animals, but never actually had any of my own. But in my research and preparation for my role this morning, I understand that people learn a lot from pets. So I will start with Margot. What pet did you learn the most from, either in your young life or growing up or as an adult? Margot Sue Bittner.
Thank you, Mike, for this opportunity to speak. As you know, we have a few pets around the winery. However, I did not grow up with pets. We had fish for a while, and my mother made us get rid of them because they were too noisy. And you may laugh, but that's the truth. My brother was allowed to have a chameleon for about 2 weeks, and he had a turtle for about 2 weeks till we went on vacation. The neighbors watched it and it disappeared. So safe to say, in my family, my mother was a little afraid of any animal. However, I did always love pets. And as a very strange twist, my father used to call me his little kitty cat, which is kind of odd because we didn't have pets. But the pedigree of the pets I have right now is a little bit different. We have a number of rescue pets, 2 from next door when the people moved and they left their cats behind, and my older cat brought me in. So we have Skipper and Slinky, and my daughter, feeling so sad when I lost 3 cats at 16, 17, and 18 in a short time, felt that 2 cats wasn't enough and got me 2 black long-haired cats for my birthday. And they are now named after their goats. They're here. But you may have been following me on Facebook and found out I now have a 5th cat. Can't get near him. He discovered when a lost dog found his way around here that there was some food, and all of a sudden there's this cat on our back step who lets me feed him, pet his head, steps back, hisses at me, eats, lets me pet his head, and does the same thing. Although last night when I fed him, he didn't hiss, he actually rubbed along my leg. So I'm making some progress. We've named him Stash, which in Polish means friend. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Margot. And my next question will be for Larry McKenzie. Larry, did you have a pet growing up, and what was that experience like? Larry McKenzie.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today, Michael. Did I have a pet when I was growing up? Actually, I had a couple of different pets. I had a small little brown dog. His name was, believe it or not, Brownie. And wonderful dog, loved him. I used to play with him when I was a kid, and he did everything. We used to fetch the ball, and I really enjoyed having him as a pet. The only problem was he liked to chew things. And he went in the dining room one night and he chewed one whole corner of the rug. Didn't go over well with my parents. After that, my parents said, well, if that happens again, we may not have Brownie much longer. He may have to go out to the farm, whatever that meant. Well, things progressed for quite a while, and Brownie used to sleep at the foot of my bed. Well, the one morning I got up to go to school, and I felt a little draft at the bottom of my feet, and I looked down, and Brownie had chewed through my bedspread, my quilt, the sheet, and right into the mattress. Needless to say, when I came home from school that day, Brownie had went to visit the farm. A friend of my dad's out somewhere, and my dad said, well, Brownie had to go visit some friends. That was not a very good moment for us. So in replacement of Brownie, we got a parakeet. And the parakeet's name was original Tweety. Now, Tweety was a great bird. We had him in this really tall cage, and he used to fly around, and it was wonderful until the one time then I tripped and I hit the bird cage. The bird cage went over, and the bird at that one point didn't kind of fly really well. And shortly thereafter, he passed away. So we had to have a funeral for Tweety. How do you have a funeral for your bird? Well, I had an empty Pringles container. I put Tweety inside, wrapped them all up nicely in the Pringles container, went outside, dug a hole in the garden, and planted Tweety in the garden. Hence, pets were not fun as a child. But thanks anyway. Have a great day. Oh, by the way, I didn't have a very good pedigree when I was a kid with the birds and stuff. So,
Thank you, Larry. And our final question will be for Jen Zappala. Jen, did you ever have any exotic pets growing up outside of cats and dogs and birds? Or do you have any stories to relay, whether you had exotic pets growing up? Jen Zappala.
Well, I mainly had regular pets like cats and dogs and birds. I had a hermit crab once, and there was one time where I found a baby mole rat in the backyard, and I carried that around with me for several hours before my mom was like, "What are you doing?" I don't know if it made it or not. It was just a little baby that I found in the back. But I had a dog most recently, Pedro. He has been my favorite pet that I've ever had. And I love the story of where his pedigree and where he came from, which was a long line of mutts, probably. He had a mix of everything. And when people used to ask me what type of dog he was, I would say he was a Mexican beagle hound because his name was Pedro, and he was kind of beagle-ish looking and sort of houndish looking, and just a little bit of a brown dog with a sort of everything in him. And he was my favorite. I got him from the shelter, and I still remember walking into the room, and it was just a wall of cages, and every dog in the place goes crazy. If you've ever been to a shelter, they're all barking and agitated when you walk into the room. And my dog was sitting perfectly still. He wasn't moving and he wasn't barking. And I looked right at him, and that was the dog. It was the only dog I took out of the cage that day, and I took him home immediately. And he's been one of my favorite dogs that I've ever had. In fact, he used to go to daycare, and this is one of my most prized possessions. Pedro made me this art. It's his paw print for Thanksgiving. It's a little paw print with a little feather. So that's, if you have a dog, I highly suggest sending them to daycare just so they can bring you home artwork. I know people like it from children, but my dog artwork is more important to me personally. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Jen. And now we will go to Larry Eggert. Larry, how do we do on time this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. Margot Bittner, 153.25. Jen Zappala, 2 minutes on the button, a seasoned Toastmaster. Larry McKenzie, 221.05. So the Pringles can with Tweety going into the ground put you over the time. So okay. Margot and Jen qualify.
Thank you, Larry. And I will go to Sylvia for our word report.
Well, let's see. Dr. Stevens used it once. Len used it once. Thomas, you used pedigree once. In table topics, all three used the word once, and Larry snuck it in there at the end. That's probably what put him over.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. And I will ask Larry McKenzie to put the poll up, and I will turn the meeting back over to our Toastmaster, Thomas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I have tons of stories about pets and my pets and pets I've had, but two stick out, and I'll do both of them on the same animal that was a young, small puppy named Heidi Ho. She was a Cocker Spaniel Poodle mix, and she came into my life when I was only in kindergarten. I remember kindergarten because we only had half days back then. You went to school for half a day, and I was the afternoon half. And I went to kindergarten, and when I got picked up by mommy with my brother, there was a puppy in the car. And we played with that puppy for years, and it was probably third grade. She was going to get rid of the blanket that was Heidi Ho's blanket. And I was like, no. She's like, but look, it's all ripped. It's torn. It's got these stains. And I'm like, yeah, that stain right there is where we first fed her like that gravy and whatever. That's a memory. That one there is when she cut herself on the barbed wire or whatever, and that was a little blood. That tear there that's like a hole, that's like a flap, we used to play with her and make her into a ghost and put her head through that. And she'd run around and trip over the blanket because she was the ghost, and she'd scare, she had like this blanket over it, but her head was sticking through a hole. Corner was ripped off, where me and my brother bonded over the fact that neither one of us could beat her in a tug of war, but together we could, and that corner ripped off. And I remember that was one of the first memories I have of me and my brother working together and a bonding not only with the animal but with each other. So there's one. I'll save the other memory for later. What I'd like to do is, now that we've done our poll, I'm going to introduce the speakers. I know the evaluators normally communicate with them, and there's different ways of doing it. Today, I'm going to introduce them, unless there's an objection. No objections. Okay. Today, our first speaker is Phil Russell. He is doing virtual communicator lessons learned, where he gave the speech once and he's redoing it again. It's a 5 to 7 minute speech, and it's living to 100. And with that, over to Phil, living to 100.
I need to be healthy to live to 106. In the last speech, I spoke about being happy, of the four things that we have: happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise, to live that kind of a life. So I did the speech on being happy. So healthy. Now, how do we stay healthy? Let's start off with diet. I am working on, because I'm a little bit overweight, COVID-19 simply meant put on 19 pounds. And I did that. I've got half of them gone. And the diet I use, I call it the Caveman Diet. Not so many carbs. Now, carbohydrates are very important in your diet, but too many of them will put on a lot of weight. So I cut down on those, and I use the Caveman Diet, eating meat, berries, and vegetables. That will help you lose some weight. And so last few weeks, I've lost 10 pounds, and I'm working on the next 10 pounds. And I have a little bit farther than that to go. Second part is exercise. Now, I get up in the morning and I like to do yoga, but I do it with the WeFit Plus. That's pretty cool. And it only takes me a half an hour, but it gives me a good stretch. And especially as we get older, you need to stretch out those joints and those muscles. You've got to keep them flexible. It's very important. I try to get to Snap Fitness as often as possible. I play golf at least once a week. On Wednesday, yesterday, we got rained out at the 6th hole, but oh well, it was fun. I like to walk. Talk about dogs. I have 2 dogs. One is a full-bred Japanese Chin. Her pedigree goes back where she was raised to have slaves, and I am her slave. The other one is complete terrier, half Jack Russell, half Yorkshire, but full terrier. And when I take them for a walk, that gives me some exercise. That's important. And as Tom pointed out, dogs are great companions. They keep you calm. They're getting older, 13 and 14, but they're great companions to help you stay calm. Now, what's the next thing? Well, I got a letter. Here's the letter. It's from my primary care physician, a very important letter. We have to do what we call it's primary care. You have to do your well fitness. That means you go to the doctor, and it's not just an annual physical. You fill out about a 10-page report, how your progress is going. Might be exaggerating on 10 pages, but it's quite a bit. And when you fill that out, you take it to the doctor with you. He puts it in to his. I keep a copy of it myself to see how I'm doing. That's so important, to make sure that you see your doctors. I don't know how many doctors you have. I think I have 5 with my health problems at times. And Healthy Blue is helping me stay fit by simply sending me these magazines and giving me some extra ideas. These are important to go to your doctor when they want to see you. Some of them it's twice a year, some of them it's just once a year. Dental checkup, of course, at least once a year. I go twice a year for a cleaning. It's very important to see it. Now, what else do you do? That's the annual physical, paperwork, all those things. I still have a good bad habit, but I haven't been doing it. And that's, I like cigars. That is a no-no. Everybody knows smoking is about the worst habit you can do. So I haven't had a cigar in a few days. And the worst part of it was these little cigarillos. They're the nastiest little buggers you'll ever want to smoke. So don't start. I'm going to stop. It's very important to do these things if you're going to live a long and healthy life. I remember years ago, my grandfather, but this was back in the 50s, fought in the Spanish-American War, comes home, he has a bit of a heart problem. In those days, you had a heart problem, you went to bed. Today, you get up and exercise. But he lived to be 75 by going to bed. And he just made it. How long could he have lived had he had modern medicine? That's one of the biggest things that's going to help us out, because we know scientifically that the human body is made physically to last 125 years if you take perfect care of it. Now, we are an aging population, and our fastest growing group is the over 100 group. So my plan is to get to that group as well. And so I am going to do the diet, the proper exercise, all those things, and see my physicians. I will never live to be 106 if I don't take care of myself. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Phil. Our second speaker today is also out of the virtual communicator pathway. It's a level 1 class, which is researching and presenting. Mr. Timer, it's 5 to 7 minutes. Our second speaker is Samir Rahman, and his speech is entitled Optimizing Your Life. Optimizing Your Life. Samir.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Optimizing your life. Numerous iconoclasts, common across the media landscape today, often embellish their brands with anecdotal advice on living life well, telling us how we can optimize our lives. Does their advice have a valid pedigree? What does science have to say? Is it even really possible to optimize your life? Initially, like almost anything in life, this probably requires defining our goals. What do we want to be optimized? Here's where research can come in handy. You may be familiar with Maslow's needs hierarchy, an oft-cited theory that categorizes human motivation into several levels. But are you aware of his corollary research? There are 14 meta-needs he found common to all, as well as unique characteristics of the self-actualized. These are very detailed lists, and they can provide a guide, and I won't get into every single one here, but many coaching and self-improvement systems focus on simplifying these into even broader categories that are more easily digestible and applicable. Even though some of these simplifications may lack the same level of depth and rigor, so I encourage you to research for yourselves. One area missing from many of these schemas is the need for growth, although perhaps that's implied by virtue of one even looking at these sorts of frameworks. I sincerely believe that the desire for personal growth may actually be the most important factor of all in this life optimization process we are all part of, whether we feel it or not. After all, it's easier to succumb to inertia, although we'll get to that later. As an example, autonomy is an easily recognizable characteristic of the self-actualized. It's a fundamental meta need for all of us, but for most of us, our most important sense of this autonomy derives from our career, which often, we hope, provides task centering, which is another characteristic Maslow identified, that allows us a connection to a higher purpose. Personally, I've always found myself open to different opportunities that can provide not just income, but growth. In the interview process, having different types of jobs throughout my career, it's important to recognize the different connections that all of us can find within each of our tasks that can apply to other tasks. One thing that one may also find in this career progression process, as one tries to optimize it, is that you may have to sacrifice something for greater meaning, or perhaps for valuable experience, or a clearer direction. Myself, going from an IT business process consultant to a nonprofit that focuses on green building architecture, was an example of connecting to a deeper meaning. Perhaps I had to sacrifice some income to do that, but it was worth it. Later, as a chemical production scheduler, I found myself having to sacrifice perhaps some of that same sense of meaning to develop more hard skills. Also, becoming an industrial engineer, optimizing furniture manufacturing was another area where I found myself learning a lot and maybe gaining clearer direction, more aligned with the namesake of my major in college, industrial engineering. Another characteristic that often finds itself negatively portrayed in modern media is the enjoyment of peak experiences. For each individual, this will be different. For some, like athletes, this could also innately tie to autonomy and your work, as well as your task-centered higher purpose. But for others like myself, this is more easily found in hobbies, which can also satisfy some of the other meta needs, like richness and liveliness. And if you're lucky, uniqueness. For example, I really enjoy music. In terms of having a peak experience with this, once when I was at a festival, I ended up being able to DJ on one of the main stages. That was definitely a peak experience for me. Video games are another area where many people find some type of optimal enjoyment of specific types of activities within the game setting that they can enjoy. Politics is another area that I've enjoyed effective debate, which could also be tied to another characteristic of the self-actualized, called the efficient perception of reality, as well as the greater meta need we all have for truth. Finally, one characteristic I myself struggle with often is the continued freshness of appreciation. Although that may tie to my autonomous choice of process optimization as a career, which inherently involves sizing up anything new for its potential for routinization and efficiency. Achieving this requires meeting several meta needs simultaneously in order to actually have a continued freshness of appreciation. But By recognizing both the essential paradoxes and implicit unity that suffuse our reality, I've come to appreciate the simple beauty of the uniqueness of each moment, every day, and every person I meet in a way that lets me find meaningfulness throughout my life. It's only inertia if you believe it is. I wholeheartedly encourage you all to learn more and find your own actualization metrics by which you can also begin to experience true personal growth, optimize your outlook, and thus your life. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Samir. Center myself. All right. Our third speaker today is speaking from the Presentation Mastery Pathway. This is a 5 to 7 minute speech, Mr. Timer. It's the evaluation and feedback where you give a speech and then give it again. So this is the second time for this one as well. It was originally titled Ready or Not, Spring is Coming. Added onto it now. Oops, summer is here. With that, let's turn it over to Jill Roy, our third speaker. Jill.
Thank you, Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters. As many of you know, Steve and I actively work and garden here on our 3+ acre estate. It is immense by our current standards. The pace slows down in winter, but we enthusiastically plan for spring during our downtime. This past winter, I began keeping track of our spring garden plans and purchases in this lovely little book that Barnes & Nobles gave us. It has problems. I keep track of all our spring purchases and plans and everything that have been purchased and ordered, but it has problems when things fall out of it or when I forget to take it with us when we go shopping. It just doesn't work. And here I'm going to share screen. Okay, here we go. For me, spring is imminent when I start making the spring to-do list. I'm guessing most of us create a list or two. I tend to be a little extreme about my lists, and sometimes I'll even add tools that I need for the job. Some of the jobs are for Steve, and the list is always getting longer. Going outside to do one job brings awareness of 3 more. Occasionally, I actually manage to cross something off the list, and that always feels like a major success. Except that in the process, I just added 2 things onto it. In fact, the list has gotten considerably longer since I first started it, including the addition of a page for recurring or daily tasks, but even that isn't complete. The list will have things that are general, just get them done as everything works out. But it will also have time-sensitive things such as plant the peas. The old proverbs say, plant peas on St. Patrick's Day, or maybe on Good Friday. Old proverbs have their place, but usually in sound reasoning, they have sound reasoning behind them. Although Good Friday can happen anytime from March 20th to April 21st, so that's quite a window. Ultimately, you have to do things as nature tells you. The first planting of peas, carrots, lettuce, radishes, and beets was done on March 23rd. See by the picture, that's right after I took the picture right after I did it. I wrote it down in my book. Then I also wrote down the first day of harvest, which was June 14th for the peas. Back in April, I was staring at my garden beds. The old plants needed to be trimmed up. Some early weeds needed to be pulled, and plenty of old leaves and pine cones needed to be raked out before I could be satisfied that the flower beds looked presentable. But I had to keep telling myself, wait, there has to be 5 50-degree days before you do it. You see, the good bugs and caterpillars and hibernating butterflies need that time to wake themselves up. Since I'm telling myself that I'm trying to create a place for the flora and fauna, I better let nature have its time to come around as well. By the time I crossed that job off all the list, because there are several places around here that have to be cleaned up. I had to start all over again. Those darn maple tree helicopters, they're all over and they're growing now. This past spring, one of our biggest projects was the firewood. We had accumulated a substantial quantity of trees since last fall, and it needed to get split and stacked into cords. I helped Steve with the splitter and move the wood with the tractor, but he's on his own for the stacking. That part is mostly Steve's job, as he's a little obsessive about the stacking. He demands that it be orderly, tight, and almost smooth enough to roll a bowling ball across the top of it, right across the top. He calls it a puzzle. He loves solving puzzles. There it is after we added, that's the current stack. But he loves creating puzzles. He loves doing puzzles. I also have puzzle pieces in my garden. The blocks I have been using to create sitting areas will only go together one way. They have no edge pieces. And did I mention that my puzzle pieces are 35 pounds a piece? While that part of the gardening puzzle has limited times of solving, there's always the continued planning of where I'm going to put the 950 plants that I ordered and the 650 plants plus seeds that we bought locally. The chore and project list does have the benefit of preventing boredom. I mean, you never get bored if you got a list like that. But what it ultimately creates is some beauty and the knowledge that, ready or not, spring has come and gone. Summer is now here, although I found an old proverb. It is not summer until the crickets sing. And since they aren't singing yet, I guess it's not summer yet. Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jill. I'd like to go directly to our timer and get a timer's report on our speeches. That is Mr.
Thank you again, Mr. Toastmaster. Everyone qualified. Phil Russell at 6 minutes, 6 seconds. Samir Rahman at 6 minutes and 1 second. And Jill Roaring at 5 minutes, 10 seconds. Mr. Toastmaster.
Why, thank you. And as some of you know, this is Lady Ripley. She is a purebred Maine Coon. She's small now, but will grow to be almost 30 pounds and basically be as large as a dog. Maine Coons are the most dog-like cat there is. They actually can be taught commands and tricks. And she is just squirming around and probably wants to get down. Very, very active kid. Very crazy. Which brings me to my second story. We had Heidi Ho for many, many years. And I'll never forget what it taught me about ending life gracefully. She had kidney failure. She was old. She had cataracts. She couldn't see. Her hips were gone. She limped around. She was in a lot of pain. So we decided that we would end everything and take care of that and basically give her a peaceful and not let her continue in suffering. Although I don't recommend that for humans, we did that for her. And that day was all about, oh my gosh, someone's clawing and coming up my leg. So that day, all of us kids, we gave her everything she wanted. We played every game, and it helped us accept it. My mother came in the room and saw us feeding the dog chocolate. I was like, "You're going to kill the dog." I'm like, "It has like an hour and a half left. What does it matter?" And that gave her the realization of what was happening. We kids had a better grasp on the reality of what was going on than she did, and she cried. And I thought that that helped me prepare for when people get older, you begin to prepare and get ready for death. And I think that, you know, death of a goldfish or a gerbil or other small animal that only lasts a few years is awesome. Unlike a parrot that will outlive you, Phil. It will live past 100. So maybe get a parrot and try and outlive it. Now that the voting is done, I see that Jill's cat is jumping around. If someone didn't see that, that's great. I'm purposely a little bit ahead in the meeting because I'd like to give, after the evaluators, and we vote on the evaluators, some time to everybody to give a couple extra stories on pets, because I know that everyone probably has a wonderful pet story. But it's time for the evaluations. So with that, we're going to move in the evaluators. Evaluating Phil Russell's speech, Living to 100, is going to be Beth Banks. Beth?
Thank you, Thomas. Well, as we all know, Phil Russell has an excellent Toastmaster pedigree. He really excels at so many things. I love the way he set himself back so we could see the gestures. No, he didn't stand, but I think standing sometimes is awkward for some people on Zoom. So that really was very good in my opinion. I liked his use of props, love the background for Phil Russell. It just looks beautiful, peaceful. How to make us healthy is to be at peace. I found that Phil's filler word is now. He used it several times. He's shaking his head. He is very well aware of that. I would just challenge Phil to watch the video to notice that filler word. I really look forward to hearing about the other two categories. How to be wealthy and wise. I want to know, how do I do that? Might be a little late for me to figure out how to be wealthy. I think that's well beyond me, but we will see. I will go right into my cat story. If you don't mind, Thomas, I'll do it now. I've had cats, dogs, multiple animals throughout my life. Probably one of my favorite was the cat we had when I was pregnant with Kate. That cat knew me very well. She was my cat. She did not understand why I wouldn't follow her under the stairs to have my kitten. She also didn't understand why I did not appreciate the wonderful meals she brought to me and let go under my bed so it would fly around the apartment. She didn't understand. She also knew when I was in labor, long before I knew I was in labor. She actually got into the car to travel to my parents' house so they could watch her while I was in the hospital. But I didn't know I was in labor and going to the hospital till I got there and asked my mother if you had to have back pains in labor. And she said no. And I said, oh, perhaps the cat is smarter than I am. I need to go to the hospital. Katie was born less than 2 hours later. So that is one of my favorite cats. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Beth. Doing her evaluation of Samir's speech, where he optimizes life. I didn't realize there were 14 subsets of needs. I have to look those up. Is Jackie Kenny, our mom of the group, and she's going to be evaluating Samir. Go ahead, Jackie.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Samir has shared his pedigree with us. We knew a little bit more about him than we do about most people in our club because his dad belongs to the club too. He's been sharing his journey and gave us some important information today. He emphasized something that we all need: steady growth in many areas of our lives. His pace today was steady, it was even, I'd like to hear more vocal variety from Samir, and I've suggested that to him before. He needs to punch it up a little bit. His background is beautiful, and I don't know how many of you noticed, but his shirt kind of goes along with the theme of his background. I found that a very interesting way to set up your appearance in your speech. In addition to more vocal variety, I'd like to see some gestures. I think you're at a point where you could start working them into your speech. Maybe not a lot and not effusive, but some gestures to emphasize points along with more voice inflection. Some of the things that the evaluation form is looking for are clarity in speech, and we certainly get that with Samir. You enunciate, you're very easy to listen to. You made good eye contact today, I thought, as well. You made sure that you were making eye contact with that camera most of the time while you were speaking. And I find that very well done. It's very important. So along with gestures and a little vocal variety, I think you have so much going for you. You bring us so much good information. You're sharing how we can improve our lives. And I think that's something that's appreciated by everyone in the group. Thank you, Samir, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Jackie. Our third speaker was Jill Roaring, where she redid her speech, and we'll use the previous feedback to improve it. And evaluating that is Thomas Moran. Thomas Moran, people, it's you.
Thank you, Thomas. Actually, I'm Tom, and I think they refer to you as Thomas. That's how we separate the two Toms out. So let me talk about Jill's speech this morning. First of all, if you'll notice, Jill, I think, has found her color. I think that violet, the top, and the hat are perfect. I couldn't, it occurred to me, I thought, God, that is so attractive. And it goes so well with the background. I mean, my God, if I looked like that, I'd be wearing that every day. And so that's one thing that Jill did that was outstanding. Another thing I appreciate is we're used to seeing the screen with both Jill and Steve. She got Steve right out of the way there, so he wasn't a distraction. I know he can sometimes be a distraction to people, so that was a good thing to do. Now, Jill, I evaluated a speech of yours probably maybe about a month ago. I forgot the last time you spoke. But at that time, you did very well with sharing the screens. And I remember commenting on that and how smoothly that went for you. Now, this morning, I believe you had a problem with it because you talked about sharing the screen and then it never came up. So even though you're able to do it, it didn't happen. But one thing that you'll notice with Jill has been speaking at the club for a long time now. She didn't panic. It would have been so easy for her to panic and go on and about everything under the sun while she was trying to share the screen, but she ran into a little glitch and she continued along with her speech, giving us the information that she has been gathering for her gardening. I would have really liked to, when you said the to-do list and the garden, I would have loved to have seen some of those pictures. So maybe as you go along through the more speeches, we can see some of that because I'm sure they look great. Another thing I liked was she used a phrase at the end or an adage that I had never heard before. It's not summer until the crickets sing. And I thought that was really quite nice. It's one of those things that the old farmers used to say. They used to work on, the time of year and what to do and when to do it, when the moon is full. And Jill is full of that information. So I can't wait until the next speech when I get some more of that, because I enjoy that as much as anybody else. I like planting a garden, and I get a lot of contentment out of caring for that, right? So thank you very much, Jill, and thank you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Tom. I kind of look like an evil genius here petting my cat. I think it was the evil genius was Claw against Mr. Gadget. He had a little white kitty like this. This is Q-Tip, little white fluff ball. He is the softest, most gentle cat ever. He doesn't really talk much. He doesn't really purr much. He just kind of chills out, and he's done. Okay, well, both cats finished almost immediately. Okay, using pedigree. We have pedigree here in the club. I didn't realize we actually have three parent-child, duos in the club. I thought, that there was only two, but I learned today that there were three. So I learned something new every day. We're going to be putting up the thing after we find out whether the evaluator is qualified, which means we need a timers report. Mr. Timer.
Mr. Toastmaster, I'm happy to report again on the evaluators. Jackie Kenny, qualified, 2 minutes, 28 seconds. Tom Moran, 3 minutes and 1 second. Beth Banks, she did her evaluation in 1 minute and 24 seconds and then had 1 minute and 11 seconds of a cat story. So I'm not sure how you want to credit her for time. If you just use the evaluation, obviously she fell a little short, but adding on that cool cat story brought her over the limit. So I'll leave it up to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Well, I'll leave that up to everyone's own independent. We'll put her on there, and you can vote if you think that that's okay, and you think was the best, or you can vote elsewise, and that way I have no opinion. I stay out of the politics of that decision. So with that vote done, I have to go back and go through the roles and then hopefully only save the Quizmaster and General Evaluator so that we can use the rest of the time to get a couple more pet stories in. So we're going to go back and go through each of the roles. Please report on your role, and then if you would like to, go ahead and tell a quick pet story. No more than 2 minutes, though, because I want to give everybody a little bit of a chance. All right, so we're going to go back. Actually, the word master is dead last. So sorry, Sylvia, if I didn't say that. So we're going to go back to Dr. Stevens, who was our quote master, but was also our master. So Mr. Gerald Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I am not the best at this job, but I did my best. So some of you may escape with some ahs and ums, but I definitely caught some. Thomas, as we know who's Thomas now, thanks to Tom Moran spelling that out, had over 5. Larry McKenzie, your filler word is well. I don't know if you know that, but it is. We have over 5 for you as well. Jen, I call with 1 well. Tough to get her, but I got her this day. Phil had 2 nows. Beth had 1 ah. And Tom had a and ah at the end. That is my report, Mr. Toastmaster.
No story?
That is my report, Mr. Toastmaster.
Okay. Didn't know if you had a pet story. Okay.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. Okay, no problem. Phil, grammarian and tech master was Len Thornton. Len Thornton.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. I'll begin with my grammarian role. Larry, I heard you say had went. That's one of my pet peeves. Had gone. Jen, when you were speaking, you used the phrase, Mom was like, what are you doing? I'm uncomfortable with the likes that we fill in our sentences. A lot of people do that still. Tom, 5 times I counted for you. And I also had, I'm sorry, not Tom, Thomas. And Thomas, you also said got picked up. I was a little awkward. Phil had, I've got half of them gone. How about I've lost half my pounds? Tom also had voting is done. Voting has been completed would be a little bit more eloquent. Let's show our pedigree here. That's about it on the grammar. No remarkably good uses of grammar today that I caught. Anyway, I'll go on to my technical evaluation of our meeting. And the theme today is how well we compose ourselves in terms of centering ourselves in the screen. I believe we can all see our own image as well as the other people here. And we have the ability to work on it, work on our lighting, our placement, our backgrounds, and so on. Margot, you tend to sit very low and you take up like the very bottom quarter of the screen sometimes. It's almost like that little Cuomo peeking through the window meme that came out last Thanksgiving. You almost look like you're just peeking up through your logo there. I think we want to see everybody's face clearly, and we should all strive to be in the center of the screen. Tracy, you were toward the edge of your screen as well. And you have what looks like a split screen. I think it's because the bookcase is such a stark contrast to the hallway and the rest of the room back there. It almost looks like a split screen. That's a little bit distracting. Larry, you were at the corner of your screen a few times. Larry Eggert. Samir, you do have a nice background, but it's kind of dark. And I would challenge you to work on your lighting. A little bit more lighting on yourself would let you use various different virtual backgrounds more effectively where you're not blending into them. Carol, you appear to be looking down at the camera. Now, none of us can see if you put a couple books beneath your laptop or whatever device you're using and get the camera more level with your eyes. That would make your appearance on camera a lot better. I also noticed when Jill pushed Steve aside, that was perfect, and she centered herself right in the shot. It's unfortunate we didn't get to see when you shared the screen, and I think we probably in the future should alert the speaker when something fundamental like that has happened. I think you were under the impression you were sharing your screen. We all could see that you weren't, obviously. We should have taken a moment to stop you there and allow for a correction on that. Props. A lot of speakers use props, and when you have a virtual background, it doesn't play well. You can see it if it's in front of me, but as soon as I go off to the side, it disappears. And this is yellow, it's not even green. I would say that if you're going to use props in your speech, turn your virtual background off. Just let us see your regular background, at least during the speech, because then the props will be visible. At least they won't fade in and out. At one point, I saw 7 people who had their video off. It looked like almost half the people. I know occasionally we have to walk away or go to the restroom or get more coffee or whatever. It almost seemed like there weren't enough people watching. I know there's people watching here, but I don't know why people would turn their screen off with such frequency there. And Larry Egger, also, I will challenge you on your lighting. Try and get a little bit more lighting on your face. It would make your appearance much better. As far as pet stories, I had the opportunity a few years ago to foster an 8-year-old cockatoo. Now, I had parakeets before in growing up. I was somewhat familiar with birds, but this bird was a real character. It had a very big personality, very needy, very demanding of my time and attention, but I had Spurred for about 2 years, and it was truly a blessing. It would get excited. It had every bit the personality of a dog or cat. It was amazing. I was really heartbroken when her owner took her back because her living arrangements had changed and she could once again care for it. So that's my most memorable pet to date. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Can't hear me if I don't unmute myself. There we go. All right, so I get to decide which one of the three the remaining goes next. I'm going to go ahead and let the general evaluator go next because he asked to be able to call for a report or reports. I'll leave him being able to still call for the word report. So Marty, you can call for the word report. Go ahead, our general evaluator for the day, unmute yourself. There you go. And it is Mr. Marty Johnson. Marty Johnson.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, fellow Toastmasters. What a wonderful meeting. I don't have much pedigree in as far as pets or owning pets that have a line of tradition, but I just wanted to share a quick funny story. Some of you know that I have chickens, and two of the chickens that I own are white leghorns, and one of the white leghorns most recently has become somewhat aggressive. And by somewhat aggressive, I mean, if I'm putting my hand down to pick up some grass or some weeds that I'm going to feed him or her and or the rest of the flock, it will want to grab at my hand or almost bite at my hand. I didn't think much of it the first couple times, but then after I got a couple welts on my arm, I said, this has to stop. So the other day, I was grabbing some dandelions because they love to eat the dandelion greens. I grabbed a couple dandelions and it started pecking at my boot. And I said, look, I said, if you keep this up, you're going to end up in the fry pan. But I would never do that. Anyway, that's my story. Hopefully there isn't another line of those or a pedigree of that type of wanting to bite or nip at my hand down the line in that type of chicken. Okay, going to I'd like to call at this time for a Wordmaster report. Wordmaster report from Sylvia.
Thank you, Marty. I have heard Len said it once. You, Marty, said twice, pedigree. Thomas twice after the first report. Our speakers, Phil Russell used it once. Samir used it. I envy people who could put the word of the day in their speech. Our three evaluators used it once each. I heard pedigree 3 times there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Now moving into my evaluation of the Toastmaster, I would just like to start off and say everyone can well see that Tom was well prepared, has a background of pets, cats and dogs. A meeting started on time. You suggested that some of the members did not have their abbreviation for their roles next to their name when they logged on, and you suggested that they do that next time so we can determine who's available for table topics and who is taking care of what role. So the identifier is very important to have next to your name. One thing, Tom, that I would like to see you do more, towards the beginning of the meeting, I didn't see much of your hands leading the applause, but then towards the middle of the meeting, you started leading the applause. And I feel that's important. It just gives you're leading the other members to follow suit, and you're also encouraging the person that's speaking. I like the use of your time in the meeting. You managed the time well. I know that you did a couple things different and everything turned out fine. Let's see. I know it is important when you're introducing a speaker and make sure that if there's anything that the audience should know, you know, that's not in the objectives, you could let them know at that time. Overall, Tom, you did a great job as Toastmaster today. You used humor throughout the meeting. You actually had a couple props, which was great. Well done. Moving into our evaluators, all three of our evaluators did a wonderful job. Beth, Jackie, and Tom, T-O-M. And Beth pointed out some things for Phil. We talked about living to be 106. She pointed out some good suggestions for Phil. Was listening very intently because she picked up two of the other variables that Phil said would help him live to 104, and she showed interest in his speech, wanting to know about those other two variables. Gave him some good advice, good constructive critique. Jackie on Samir's speech, again, pointed out some things for Samir to work on, some things that he's doing well, and gave him some suggestions for improvement and challenged him. Tom Moran, evaluating Jill Roaring's speech, pointed out something I noticed too on the color scheme of your background with the flowers and your dress and your hat. Everything was nice, the color. And again, I know we're all working on screen sharing. It's one of those things that, what do they say? Perfect practice makes perfect. So we're all just, and Jill included, myself included, we'll all just keep working on these little things. All the little things matter, I feel, little things. And the next time you give the speech, Jill, I can't wait to see some of those images of the different gardens and that you have on your property. And Tom also pointed out and challenged Jill, gave her a couple good suggestions for improvement. At this point, I'm going to turn control of the meeting back over to the Toastmaster of the day, Thomas Heldwine, to wrap things up. Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. General Evaluator, Marty Johnson. Well, we have 12 minutes left. What I'd like to do is get the quiz master to give us quiz, which means everyone can unmute. And then once the quiz master is done, Larry, if you'd like to stop recording, and then we'll just go into stories for the remaining 10 minutes. Everyone unmuted and just enjoy ourselves. And or if you have to leave you'd like to leave with a couple minutes early, that's fine too. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the quiz master, Mike Florio. Mike, please give us some thoughtful questions.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. It was a lot of fun today. I have a lot of notes. It was great listening to some of the stories of everyone's pets. Now, let's start out with, what term did Thomas use that is helpful for people in hospitals with pets, to bring in pets?
Dualia?
Yeah, I wasn't positive what it was. That's kind of close enough, I think, Jen. Zuali, G-L-E-L, something like that. I'll have to look that up a little bit later, but that was close enough. We give you the credit for that. Sylvia has how many pets?
2.
How many?
2.
2, that's right, Larry, 2. Okay, let's see. I think I stole Thomas's thunder, but what were Rocky's pets and what were their names?
Cuff and Link.
Off and Link.
Duff and Link. Margot, why did she have to get rid of her fish?
Too noisy.
Too noisy.
Too noisy.
The fish was too noisy.
That's amazing. How many cats did Margot have? Or does she have?
5.
And what is the name of the Polish name of
Dash.
her favorite cat?
Dash.
Dash. Yeah. Which means friend. I thought that was kind of cool. Larry, man, I really enjoyed your speech. What happened to his dog? What was his name?
Brownie.
Brownie.
Brownie. And where did he go?
To the farm.
Went to the farm.
I think that's what they usually say when they want to break it to you gently.
Yeah.
He
Went to the farm.
What was Jen's unique animal, which I never, she
Mole rat.
Rat.
Yeah, that was kind of scary, Jen. Okay, I mean, your mom did you a favor.
My mom thought so too.
What was that?
I said my mom thought so too.
Yeah. And what was Jen's dog's name, and what was his hobby?
Pedro,
Pedro.
and he was what do you do?
Eating tacos.
What was that? Eating tacos? No, nobody. Pedro was an artist.
Oh, that's right.
He came.
Wait, I have a question. I was quite surprised that Jen's dog has feathers.
Yeah. I was wondering. I thought when I saw that at first, I thought, oh my gosh.
Arts and crafts.
It's a bird dog.
She saved some of the fur from the dog. I wasn't sure what that was at first. It was
He caught a bird at camp.
Maybe it was the mole rat that.
I thought I saw. What do you got?
What article of, I guess you would call it clothing, did Tom not want to let go of Thomas? To say
The dog's blanket.
The dog's blanket. Very nice. Yeah, I would hope you wash that maybe a little bit every once in a while there, Thomas, but Phil actually wants to live to 106, not 104. I just wanted to make that clear. That's not part of the test, but what are the 4 things that you need in order to make it to 106?
You gotta have a sense of humor.
Well,
That's
health,
one of them.
money.
Happy, health, wealthy, wise.
What was that, Jill?
Happy, health, wealthy, wise.
There you go. That's it, exactly. Samir, who did Samir turn to go over the hierarchy of needs?
Marty.
No, what psychologist?
Maslow.
Sorry.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And how many other beyond the normal pyramid did Samir say?
14.
There were 14.
14.
Correct. Jill, when does Jill plant her peas?
March.
The peas with
What holiday?
St. Patrick's Day.
St.
I thought
Patrick's
that was
Day.
awesome. I did not know that you could plant them that early and on that date. So that was very interesting. Let's see. What is the name of the last cat that Thomas brought out?
Q-tip.
Q-tip. There you go. That's it. And I have to thank my wife for pets because my dad came from New York City and he didn't hate, but he didn't really like animals. And so we never had animals as a kid. And when I met my wife, well, she's a country girl and she had raccoons, dogs, and she had to basically force me to get a dog. Her father found one day and we named him Pete after this cartoon show, Pete and Pete, that my boys really liked. And I'll tell you, we've had 4 dogs since then. And my best buddy, Leo, passed away. He was really a pedigree. He was a golden retriever. And And dogs have just been awesome in my life. And now I have grand dogs. You know, I have Jet and Nellie. My son lives down the street, and they come over, and my son did much more training with the dogs than I ever would. We have that ball chucker thing that we throw in the backyard. We have an acre of land, and that dog will run all the way back, so strong. And then the other dog, Nellie, she can catch a Frisbee like nobody's business. And I mean, it's just so much fun playing with those dogs. And then we don't have to feed them, and they go home. I mean, grand dogs are almost like grandchildren. It's really kind of cool. So anyway, I really enjoyed this meeting, and thanks everybody. Mr. Toastmaster.
Yay. Thank you, Mike. I forgot almost awards and announcements. So the cat is playing with my mouse and making it inactive, active, inactive, active. So I'm trying to scroll up to the awards and find, come on, cat, stop it. All right. Stop biting the thing. All right, there we go. I'm unplugging it. So go ahead and play with all you want. All right. So our winners for today for table topics, it was Jen Zappa's. For our evaluators, Jackie Kenny.
Thank you.
And our speaker of the day was Samir. So congratulations to all of those announcements. Well, the most important announcement is the next week's meeting. And next week's meeting is going to be the Toastmasters Larry McKenzie. And he has chosen the theme. Go ahead and let us know, Larry, what's the theme, and if you have any, and then we'll open it up for any general announcements.
The theme for next week will be ice cream. Bring your favorite flavor or your favorite whatever story about ice cream.
Totally stole my theme for next time, just so you know.
Is that yours? Sorry.
Any general announcements? Anyone have anything other than that there's going to be an email?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Yesterday morning at 7 a.m., yesterday morning, I presided over a meeting of the Lockport Sunrise Optimist Club at 7 a.m. at Tom's Diner. Giddy up.
What's their mask policy there?
No one's wearing a mask in Tom's Diner anymore.
Oh. Social, are you separated at all?
Nope.
Oh, nothing.
Does he still have up the plastic barriers?
Yep, but if we can work that room like it was before, we can work it with the plastic barriers.
Okay. Yes, there'll be an email on our virtual meetings. I believe Sylvia's already gotten us an ability to go in and at least try it at least 1 week at the YMCA in Lockport. And in real time, this is what's left of my mouth. Apparently someone decided to make it into 4 pieces. I don't think it's repairable. It's pretty much toast, but now it's a toy. Larry, if you would, I think we'll close the meeting, say thank everybody, and everyone please stick around.